Welcome back, dear audience, to another episode of the Longevity and Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Claudia von Boeselager, here to bring you the latest insights and learnings to improve your health, life, and happiness for longer. Thank you so much for being part of this tribe and wanting to be at your best each day. I'd love to hear from you, so make sure to reach out on Instagram at Longevity and Lifestyle. My guest today is repeat guest Garnet Dupuis. This is going to be our round 2 of 2. He's a pioneering figure in the field of brain wellness technology, particularly known for his work with NeuroVIZR. We're going to dig into some of the science around brain training and brain signal variability and some other really interesting developments happening in the space to have optimal cognitive function when you need it. So please enjoy. And for the previous episode, make sure to go back and check that out as well. Welcome back to the Longevity and Lifestyle Podcast, Garnet. It's such a pleasure to have you back already for round 2 of our conversation. So welcome.
Okay, you've got the steering wheel. Let's go for a ride.
Okay, beautiful. So this for round 2, and for listeners interested in round 1, please just have a look at any of the podcast channels and you can find our initial conversation. And in this one, we want to dig into a little bit more of the science around the brain, right? And perhaps, Garnet, just for in case anyone's missed round 1, can you share just briefly as to your background and your interest around, the brain and what's going on and why it is that you've become so passionate and such a pioneer in this field?
I don't know why. It would have been more of a choice not to do it than to do it. I've always been interested in what we'll call consciousness or the divine or what the hell's happening. And I wanted to start spiritual, but there was no guidance at the time. I was raised Roman Catholic. The religion helped me with morality and the sense of mystery. So I thought, well, I'm going to start with the body because I have one. And bit by bit, I'll go from the body to the mind, and I'll go from the mind to the soul, and then from the soul to the spirit. And, that's a game plan. I'm like a rocket that should have dropped off the booster, but they stick together. So it's all just been one thing for me. And I'm a traditionalist. I'm pretty conservative in spiritual traditions. I'm smart enough that I can read and learn, and technology now is enabling. So I don't know. That's the short version this time, at least.
But yeah, exactly. But the fascination with the brain and developing NeuroVIZR, maybe you can share a little bit more about that.
The brain, we haven't really known much about the brain. I say we as a society, as a science. Everybody says it's the most complex thing of all. How do we know that? I don't know, because it's complicated. And because I mentioned I've always been in traditional spiritual practices throughout my life. It's sort of home for me. And so it's this curiosity. We experience something called the mind, but I know that we have a brain. And so what's that? And then there's the issue of aging and what's going on? And I've seen people that don't age well cognitively, and that's scary. And then,
sad,
one of the goals of science is for science to prove when science is wrong. That's the thing science should do. And we had a very wrong understanding about the adult brain. And now, the magic word is neuroplasticity, that our adult brain will keep on learning and changing and morphing according to experience. And you can have that as a negative slip and slide or as a positive grow and gain. So that got me back interested. I've worked with technologies in the past, usually more esoteric, unusual things. And, I'm here in northern Thailand. I was living up in the mountains in the rainforest, doing wild animal conservation work, have a lovely spa in Bangkok. It's like, and then it just became too intriguing, essentially, that, wow, wait a minute. So if this possible to help your brain stay better, I'm not going to argue what is brain, what is mind, whatever, but I do know that we do have a brain, and it's better when it works better. And so with what I know and with what is happening now, that would be really interesting. a good thing. I like doing good things if I can. This would be a good thing to do to see whether there's some way to help our brains be better. So I have this attitude that whatever state of our brain today, it could be better tomorrow. The brain is physical.
Irrespective of age, right? So just to make that point for people listening,
No,
because I think there is that.
let's get realistic, because the brain is physical, like the rest of my body. So
Yeah.
yes, my body can be better tomorrow than it is today, but it's never going to be like it was 40 years ago. So, let's not get
Unless,
too.
well, but I guess the pointers of the question is like, can you maintain it at an optimal state for longer through brain training, etc.? Or do you
Well,
think that you would still have a decline, but less so?
I think there's a lot of positive that we can do, a lot
Hmm.
that we can do. I'll say this just as a reference, not because it's prideful, but I'm 75 now. Cognitively, of course, I have to be careful because it's on my own bias and metric. But I feel that I'll say the creative or the intellectual, insightful thing, I'll call it my
Hmm.
mind. I'll say it. I feel that it works better than when I was 45. So
Hmm.
I don't know if that's true, but that's my sense of the experience. My body's getting slower. I don't do enough exercise. My muscles are. I was raised a farm boy, strong. My body is not as strong.
Hmm.
I've always been smart, but it's a different kind of. It's a different kind of
Sharpness, would you say?
cognition. It's a different. Okay, and also, I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke weed. I don't do those things.
Hmm.
I've been a lifelong meditator, whatever that means exactly. So who knows? Maybe it all adds up. I
Yeah.
just feel lucky, but there's really something going
Hmm.
on in terms of mental well-being and what I'll call brain health. There's something
Yeah.
there, and we
Yeah.
don't know much about it, but what we do know is encouraging against a backdrop of very scary stuff.
For sure. And I mean, my mother suffers dementia, so this is a very
Okay, well,
close to
you know,
heart thing. Yeah.
in
And these are,
classes, I oftentimes say, "Who wants to live a long life?" And most people raise their hand, and I say,
yeah,
"Do you know that industrialized nations between the age of 80 and 85?" I'm 75. 80 used to seem like a long ways, like
that's it.
on the
Yeah.
other side of the planet, and now it's
Yeah.
only 5 years. That
Yeah.
it's a 50-50 statistical chance of dementia between the age of 80 and 85. Well, like,
Yeah.
wow, that's okay. So because it's in your family, it's a big, it's a scary thing. It's an uncomfortable, bad, scary thing.
Yeah, but I'm actually less scared of it now. I mean, maybe just as a side thing that I've, had different neuroscientists on as well, like Dr. Del Bredesen, who's
Sure.
identified 38 underlying drivers that lead
Okay.
to circumstances that cause neurodegenerative diseases and
Okay.
how to test for those markers.
Mm,
And essentially, his view is Alzheimer's should be a disease of the past and dementia,
mm,
because if you ensure that you maintain optimal vitamin D levels, magnesium levels, insulin resistance, or mitigate insulin resistance, head trauma is obviously another thing, hormone levels, etc. So there are different drivers around it. Toxicity in the
mm,
body, right? Mercury, black mold, etc. If
yeah.
they're all kept in the right parameters, then you should not, even if you're genetically predisposed,
Yeah.
sorry, this is my
Disposed.
lack of sleep last night.
Yeah. Disposed.
Predisposed, there we go,
Yeah.
that you won't have the issue. And interestingly, my mother does not carry either copy of the APOE4 gene. I have a single copy, but turns out my father at 86 has one. He's doing okay.
Yeah.
So again, it's lifestyle plays a huge role into it, into these
Yeah.
factors as well, which I find empowering for people to understand that it's not a death sentence that it runs in
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
family.
Yeah. 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 I'm sometimes a bad boy. When I hear that, I think, well, I'll say it in a crude and stupid way, and this is not referring to you or your family. That's great
Sure.
news for rich people.
Hmm.
But that lifestyle and circumstance right now. I have friends that are prominent biohackers and influence leaders and the whole thing, and I say, well, this is great. Most people don't have $2,000 a month to spend on supplements. They don't have their own cryo chamber in their exercise room.
Yeah.
That I'm trying to I used to think I'm special, and I'm not. I realize that I'm pretty average in most ways. And I'm thinking about the average person and, what can we do? What
Yeah.
can we do? And yeah, that's my sentiment. So it's not to
Hmm.
contradict what you're saying. What you're saying is
I
true.
hear you. Yeah. No, the testing, etc., is pricey. The supplementation can be pricey. That
Yeah.
said, exercise, going for a walk, going for a
There you go.
run, you
Yeah.
need to buy a pair of sneakers. Like, you can find them on sale for $10 if needed, I
Yes.
think,
Yes.
somewhere.
All of that. There I go.
Right?
Yeah, I agree.
Breathing well, sleeping well, meditating, intermittent fasting where appropriate, right? So there are
Yeah.
different components. There's other components that are a bit pricier, but some of them are essentially free.
I was on a podcast some time ago with one of my buddies who's one of the leaders. I'll skip his name. It's Jean Falacara. And
Of course, he's a friend as
whoops,
well.
how did that come out? And he's a
Uh-huh.
good friend of mine. And,
Yeah.
and now he's starting his life-spanning longevity thing. He was an extreme biohacker. And I said, Jean, kind of what I already said to you. I said, with all this stuff you're talking about, please, can you help me understand something that a single mother with 2 kids and 2 jobs can do from the biohacking perspective?
Mm.
So obviously she doesn't have much time, energy, limited budget, the whole thing. And he was very
Yeah.
clever. And I give him credit for that. He said, okay, uh, give her the advice once in a while when she has a chance to just walk backwards here and there within her apartment or her house.
It's
And I
good for the
thought,
brain.
oh, good move, good
Hmm.
move. So I have a kind of a sensitivity towards what I'll call the average person
Hmm.
because I think I'm one of them. And I used to get asked because I was in healthcare practice, what's the kind of exercise? So sports medicine stuff. What's the best kind of exercise? I said, well, that's easy. It's not easy. There's so many kinds. I said, come on, it's really easy. They said, don't shit me. What's
Hmm.
the best kind of exercise? I said, well, it's easy. It's the one you're going to do. It's this compliance thing.
Yeah.
It's this compliance thing.
And
And
consistently do and not overdo, etc.
yeah, okay. So
Garnet, so let's talk about neuroplasticity, and maybe you can
let's do it.
just, for those unfamiliar, define what that is. And how is neuroplasticity supported by pulsating lights, which is essentially part of the neurovisors,
Yeah,
and you incorporate music into it as well. So could you walk us down that path, please?
sure. Um, there's an awful lot that I don't know, and a few things that I do, and I'll do my best to be honest about that.
Sure.
The neuroplasticity is pretty simply the ability for a physical organism to respond to challenges by making positive changes. And we didn't think that was true about the adult brain. We thought the adult brain pretty much finished at around 23 to 25 years old. And I don't know if you know the old stuff. They say, you only got a certain number of brain cells. They're going to die off and you're screwed.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's
When I
like,
was
well,
growing up, it bumped your head. You lost 100 brain cells. Like, oh,
yeah, it's
they're
like, oh,
never getting
come
them
on,
back.
really? So, but the idea is that's still partly true because the plasticity of the growing brain is outrageous, outrageous, and that outrage slows down into early adulthood. However, it does not mean change is not possible. Certain areas of the of brain can change quite impressively. Fortunately, one of them is the hippocampus, which is basically a memory central in the brain. So if we recognize that our brain is physical, it's as physical as your heart, as your spine, as your hamstring muscle, the things we know about our soma are in many ways true about our brain. It's kind of artificial to even separate the brain from the body as a whole. So,
Hmm.
what we know about the body, if you do little challenging movements or call them exercises, whatever, that the body will respond because it's a little bit of a insult, but it's not an injury. And if you do that, that the body will say, well, hey, I don't want that to happen again. I'm going to change. And we can do that with our brain. So the question is, well, that's great. How do I do it? And most of the early processes have been neurologically what's called top down thinking stuff. Well,
Hmm.
your brain is good for thinking, then thinking stuff should be good for your brain. And it turns out if you do certain puzzles or certain games, that you will improve. That's the good news. Not so good news is that the brain will improve only in that silo. It'll improve in relation to that game or puzzle, but it doesn't diversify into other areas. So oh shit, I thought it was like that was the thing to do. It is good to do, but
Yeah.
it's too narrow. So that's
Hmm.
what's called top down. Bottom up is direct sensory input, and sensory input has a great deal more diversified applications than simple top down. So what you
Hmm.
want to do is it's absurd to separate them because it's impossible to separate, but you want to have bottom up. So what's bottom up? Immediacy, sensory input. Like you said, like exercise, by moving your body and doing things, actually you're moving your brain. There's
Hmm.
nothing right now. You're looking at a human brain. This is what it looks like. It has a somatization, but this is my brain. So when
Hmm.
I wave my hands around, I'm waving my brain around.
Hmm.
So the NeuroVIZR, which is a light and sound stimulation device, non-drug, non-invasive neurotech, is a way of activating or exercising your brain with direct sensory input. So it's not cognition, meaning you don't think it to activate it, you feel it to
Hmm.
activate it. So neuroplasticity does respond to immediate sensory somatic processes like exercise, like dance, like the NeuroVIZR. Yeah.
Is there research around how much more receptive the brain is to that sensory input versus the thinking input, as you were calling it?
Well, yeah, the kind of the hottest new, sexy brain model right now is predictive coding. And that concept of the brain always seeking patterns and recognized safety, trying
Hmm.
to avoid surprises and novelty. I have a little conflict with Friston on that one, but I mean, who am I? But that the the idea is that the brain, our brain, your brain and mine, basically it's a pattern seeking organ. It
Yeah.
tries to, okay, so bottom up is always right now. Carhart
Hmm.
Harris in Tropic Brain, he says that's primary consciousness. And that over time, secondary consciousness says, hey, I've got all this experience. Why don't I do something with it other than just feel it? So
Hmm.
we start to develop a library of the past and a crystal ball of the future. And we use that. Actually, almost all of our experience until you bump into this thing called now is a virtual projection that we're
Hmm.
always testing. Is this correct? Is this correct? Is this correct? And the example I give, pardon me, maybe I've done it before. I have a house up in the rainforest, so this is like understandable. You're walking, around. I don't have a garden, I just have a forest. Walking around, you look down and oh, there's a snake. And then I look down like, oh, what kind of snake? I look down, oh, it's a piece of an old garden hose. So that's an example of a reference from the past projecting into a future. It's a better safe than sorry thing. Better safe
Hmm.
than sorry. So I was wrong. So that's called a prediction error in the model. And the idea is we keep on updating that all the time. Well, the danger there is this active, speaking in the model of predictive coding, this
Hmm.
active inference. Basically, active inference is like a confirmation bias that we want to confirm that what we believe is true.
Yeah.
And
Because it's the path of least resistance, right? It's like the known. So it tries to go to
yeah,
that straight away and to
yeah,
expend less energy,
yeah,
essentially.
even if it's wrong is
Yeah.
the problem. And
Yeah.
this is where
That's
the
the point.
neuroplasticity comes in, that
Hmm.
when you want to affect and improve the brain by modifying it with neuroplastic processes, we have to understand that, call it a pattern, call it a belief, call it a habit, that they resist change. That we so much of learning we realize is actually not additive, it's subtracting. There are a lot of things we have to unlearn.
Hmm.
We have to unlearn. And a good part of neuroplastic growth is sometimes, you know, that pattern doesn't work anymore. that process doesn't work. But the problem is it's kind of glued.
Mm.
It's kind of glued.
Mhm.
So processes that affect neuroplasticity oftentimes fail because they come in with the expectation, oh, I'm just going to tell Claudia how to change, and she's going to do it because psychologically now she knows, not
Mhm.
knowing that there is an actual neural conglomerate of neurons that are habituated. So the
Mhm.
idea is when you want to provoke change, you have to expect you, I, me, who, the pronouns
Mhm.
are interesting, but that we
Yeah,
have to
a person needs
appreciate
to.
the first thing to do is that we have to soften the glue of habituation
Mhm.
somehow. And that's where Card Harris and Friston, Carl Friston, they came in with this rebus thing, the acronym rebus, like a school bus, rebus. It's a
Mhm.
Slovak acronym. And, they're involved in psychedelic research. So
Yeah.
it references, we'll talk about that, but that relaxing existing beliefs using psychedelics. So it's PS. It could have been rebus. I guess rebus sounds better. But
Mhm.
so rebus. Okay, so my position is relaxing existing beliefs or patterns or habits, relaxing existing beliefs using something,
Mhm.
something. And that
Mhm.
something I call a psychoactive agent, something that softens the glue and then moves the activation up to higher levels where new possibilities can happen, then taking them back down again. And in my estimation, which is limited, obviously, is that techniques that work and don't work is because they're not softening the glue first, and that it takes some kind of activation. It could be, I don't know, cold plunge, it could be fasting, it could be drumming, it could be pranayamas, it could be NeuroVIZR, it could be psychedelics, it could be a painful suffering condition, it could be a lot of things can do that. And to recognize, soften the glue, loosen it up, create an opportunity for imprint, then let it settle down. That's actually, in a kind of a graphic way, what neuroplasticity is about.
Mhm.
So,
So softening and then the rewiring, essentially.
yeah, yeah, and you can't rewire. The old analogy I used to use is you have honey and you put a bunch of toothpicks in it, and then you put it in the refrigerator. It's a stupid example. You put it in the
Yeah.
refrigerator, you take it out, you want to change the toothpicks around. Well, the honey is hard like a rock. So first is soften the honey, heat it up or
Mhm.
something. Then you can change the toothpick patterns, then put it
Mhm.
back in the fridge again. But
Mhm.
it's this process
Yeah.
of brain prime, brain time.
That's really helpful for understanding that softening importance of it. And so, can you expand on how using pulsating light, right?
Mm,
So, through the eye
hmm
and sound,
hmm
how that is supporting neuroplasticity and the softening and rewiring?
Well, I'll try as best as I understand.
Hmm.
I started doing it based on a lot of overlapping principles. Now you're like, what's your research? Well, I'm using all of this elegant research and I'm trying to put it together in a way that seems reasonable.
Yeah.
So there is this extraordinary quality of mind. It's exceptional, and we usually call it attention. All right, can you pay attention? Do I have your attention, please? Right. This thing called, it's in Qigong, it's in biofeedback, it's in meditation, it's in marital arguments. Are you paying attention? So what this thing called attention is, I think, the primal psychoactive agent. When I
Mhm.
think about it, and this is going to answer your question, by the way, but there's a
Sure.
kind of a logic, I think, that what do pain and pleasure have in common?
They are triggering strong emotions.
That's a result. Okay. Okay. I apologize. I use the same example. I still think it's funny. I don't think anybody ever thought it was, but I do. Okay. I'll do it this way. I'll say an ice pick. I don't know if anybody even knows what an ice pick is anymore. A kind of a knife. I have a
Mhm.
knife and I start to jab it repeatedly in your left knee. Okay. Or And okay, I don't mean to be rude. I don't know how it happens, but somehow you have this intense orgasm in your left knee. So
Okay.
meaning one is very painful, one is very pleasurable.
Mm-hmm.
What do they have absolutely in common other than my insanity? I won't play the game.
Triggering an impact in the brain.
Nah, come on.
Sensory. I don't know. Tell me.
Your attention goes to your left knee.
Your attention goes to, okay. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the basic thing. You
Yeah.
may not have been aware, even right now, for me to say your left knee
And of course, the
right
mind
now.
goes to it.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
okay, just that. So what's that? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why do we do that? Because,
Mm-hmm.
people that don't feel usually die young. So,
Mm-hmm.
what is it about attention
Mm-hmm.
that is such a big deal? Well, attention is involved in neuroplastic change. There are two or three different sayings in neuroplasticity. The most famous from a Canadian, Donald Hebb, used to be called Hebbian learning, 1949, his book.
Mm-hmm.
Fire it to wire it. He's the
Yeah.
one that laid that down as a premise. You've got to activate something in order to engage it. And
Mm-hmm.
then the other, of course, is use it or lose it, which is kind of the opposite, but we hear that. And the
Mm-hmm.
third thing is really important, although it's a little less evident. The brain changes what matters.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
brain changes what matters. And here I'll go a little bit Buddhist. It's like, what's this thing called suffering? It certainly engages your attention. And the brain changes what matters. I think what becomes attentive, what we become aware of is the initiating process in change as a whole. We're getting information. I sleep, sleep positions. I like laying on my side, bed pillow, right side usually. I start. After a while, the yumminess goes away. It's like I don't like it anymore. I want to lay on my left side. Well, what's wrong with you? Make up your mind. Well, I don't know what happened. So I have to go through the process, which is, by the way, predictive in intent, but chaotic in achievement, where I start to roll over, my leg gets caught in the pillow moves and things like that. But I do finally end up over there. So what got my attention? Something called discomfort. So
Mm-hmm.
in neuroplastic processes, the first thing is I'll say the fundamental primal organics biological thing called attention. And this is why, and I've been involved with the brain stuff for a long time. Brain entrainment is, people know about it. It's called the frequency following response. Now we call it brain entrainment. And what does that tell you? That if you induce a rhythmic periodic signal for a few minutes, it's called superimposition. You're kind of making the brain do it. Then the brain starts to do it. So you don't have to pay attention for it to happen.
Mm-hmm. So
Your brain
passive.
will just do it. You don't have to pay any
Mm-hmm.
attention at all. So that's
Mm-hmm.
going to tell you, would brain entrainment be a dynamic neuroplastic methodology foundation? Nope. Step number one, there's no need for you to pay attention. There's no focused attention there. And so that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, and this is why I'll tell you why the light and sound do it. The second thing is there has to be what's called marginal demand. Just a little. This is true in flow state and Csikszentmihalyi and the whole thing is that
Mm-hmm.
there's this thing called I'm okay right there, and then there's just like a tiptoe past that line.
Out of the comfort zone a little bit. Yeah.
Just a
Mm-hmm.
tad. I call it marginal
Mm-hmm.
demand.
Yeah.
Those two things combined with a third thing, it's kind of more diffuse. We'll call it belief, open-mindedness, willingness. That's like,
Mm-hmm.
I hate this shit. I have to do it, but I'll go. No, that some amount of faithfulness or willingness or open willingness maybe is the most general feeling. So focused attention, marginal demand, and willingness. Then a fourth thing that is the secret sauce makes all of those other things work better. And it's a very complex neural hormonal chemical state, and it's called enjoy. If you
Mm-hmm.
enjoy it, okay, so with those four things, focused attention, marginal demand, open-minded willingness, and enjoyment, the NeuroVIZR design uses a compositional integration of light and sound so that it says hello and then it creates a destabilization. That's like, that is kind of like the dagger in the knee thing, that
Hmm.
that it gets attention, because what starts off as, oh, that's nice, I wonder what's happening, that it creates an appetite for signal. Our brain is always trying to find signal and noise. It's always trying to figure out what's happening. And
Hmm.
when it doesn't know what's happening, I don't really spin the body around, but it's kind of like spinning the brain around, spinning the mind around a little bit in the beginning. So it's like, whoa, what's happening? I'm not a Sufi or a 4-year-old, so I don't like it. So at that point is the first introduction of imprint. It's the first time the vector starts to come in. I can't make the brain do anything, but I can create probability states.
Hmm.
Probability. So it says, let's consider this. So that process is part of what softens the glue. It gets things like, wait a minute, I don't know what I was thinking before, but what am I doing right now? It does that. So once
Hmm.
the brain starts, and this is all in the brain signaling and the sound. So it's not brain entrainment. I don't just like play Celtic harps and do binaural beat of something, that
Yeah.
it's like it's a story. It's a story that the brain understands, because the brain always encounters this in life. It's like, what's happening? Do I understand it or not? Is it new? So, and then once the brain starts to lock in and it says, oh, I got it. I say, oh, you really got it? And then you create some conflict. Like you slap it left and right a few times. Like, are you sure you've got it? Yeah, I got it. And then you reward it, then you reinforce it. So it's a very templated, conscious structure that uses light and sound to do that stuff: pay attention, marginal demand, open-minded willingness, imprint, and it does it incrementally. So the last thing I'll say is there are two ways to do that. One is short-term state shift. Oh, I feel better, or I feel different, or I feel good. And the other is to do it repeatedly over time for long term. So you've got short term state shift,
Hmm.
long-term trait shaping, and you can do it with light and sound.
So I want to ask a couple of questions around that, Garnet, and thank you for breaking that down. But
Sure.
for people listening in particular, but also watching, just to understand, I know that Garnet was referring to stabbing in the knee, and just so you know, the sensation of using the neurovisor is not like being stabbed in the knee or in the eye or anything like that. So just to make that point,
Okay. Well done. Well
so
done.
that people are aware. And so essentially, and I'll just try to describe it. It's like a band that goes around your head and then around the back of your. So basically,
Mhm.
once around your head, and then there is almost,
I
I
can
guess, like a
show you one.
visor
You,
essentially
you want me to
with
show you one?
a. Yeah, I don't have mine in the room here, so maybe you can show for people watching. But if people are listening as well, maybe if you have one
Okay.
in front of you to show.
15 seconds. Hang on.
Okay, I'll continue describing it while Garnet
Please
quickly
do.
goes and get his device. But it essentially at the end of the visor is a clip-on light panel, and you keep your eyes closed during the process, and the light is pulsating, flickering back and forth, and causing you to see different colors, and constantly swirling and moving around. And so that is the physical device. It is not painful. It is definitely, if you've never
Hello.
tried something like this before. So Garnet is thankfully modeling this here for
Yeah.
us. So yeah, that's the clip-on
Yeah.
light panel.
With headphones or earbuds.
Yeah, and then with the headphones and earbuds.
Hmm.
So you were explaining, Garnet, that
Yeah.
the light unglues the beliefs, right? It unglues the neural pathways for
Hmm.
certain belief systems. But does it also help to rewire them into the
Yeah.
positive?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
on in
Absolutely.
the app there are different programs, so maybe you can talk about that. Like you're doing the ungluing to be more receptive and open to a new way of
Yeah.
thinking, a new way of doing things. And
Hmm.
is it also doing that during the process too? And how?
Okay. Yes, just like you said, that I use glue. I'm a visual guy, so I like, imagining sort of analogies. Not actually glue, although amyloid plaque might be, who knows. But there's no glue in
Hmm.
that sense. And my camera's gone out of focus here. Um, that Neurologically, it's called a fixation. Hang on. I want a new camera for Christmas. Oh, here, now I'm back in
There you go.
my autofocus. It's okay now. Maybe it was my mind. I'm not sure. But
Exactly.
it could have been. You never know.
All the brain
Um,
training, like, oh.
yeah. So technically, it's called a fixation. It's when the brain kind of gets stuck into certain frequency bands. In
Mhm.
neurofeedback, it's called a fixation. I say it gets glued. Also, we all know that habits, good or bad, are hard to break. So if there is something that goes in that wants to enable change, the first thing is to consider the fact that the brain probably doesn't want to change,
Yeah.
and that we have to do something to soften that resistance. So when the process begins, there's a little bit of funny stuff, and that works towards creating an appetite. I'll say a neurological appetite for signal. Because basically it says, well, I don't know. Maybe I'll like it, maybe I won't. I'm just going to sit and wait. So I don't let it do that.
Hmm.
Then, once things loosen up, that's when new information can be induced or suggested. Imprinted sounds a little bit like mechanical, but
Yeah.
that's a time when, like if you're really hungry, if I don't let you eat and you're really hungry and I give you a piece of raw kale, it might even taste good. I mean, strangely enough, if you're hungry enough.
Yeah.
So it's this thing, again, I'm using analogies or metaphors perhaps, but that it's a way of getting the brain hungry for new information
Hmm.
that it may not normally want to consider. And you get that going by some destabilization and that's not that difficult to do. I mean, there are a lot of sound light patterns that can destabilize.
And
Um,
is it like 30 seconds, 1 minute? Like, is it because the
okay.
sessions are, let's say, 7 to 11 minutes, right? So
Mm,
is it the first few minutes that it's the destabilizing in order to open up the receptiveness to rewiring?
it depends on the session design.
Okay.
Some are it's like slow dancing. Some are a little bit more demanding because they're different. People want different things at different times. The basic light sound session, I've chosen 11 minutes for almost all of them, not all, but almost all,
Hmm.
because the average human adult brain can maintain focused attention for 10 to 12 minutes. That's a kind of
Hmm.
a psychological, neurological average. And then, depending on your local neurotransmitter pool, then you can refresh it one time again, which is why we end up with a 20-minute TED talk and 20 minutes of TM meditation. And, even the old TV that had the half-hour TV program without the ads, that was 22 minutes. Like, what is this 20-minute thing? Well, that's just the way our brains are.
Hmm.
So 11 minutes is what I call the brain prime with a P, brain prime, 11 minutes. It's difficult for me to convince users that the real great, amazing stuff begins when the light and sound end. So, analogy again, eat a meal, it's delicious, you love it, enjoy it. When you
Hmm.
finish eating, you start digesting.
Hmm.
So, the major impact of an 11-minute NeuroVIZR session can be compounded, can be amplified if when it finishes, you go from brain prime with a P to brain time with a T, like that.
Hmm.
And what do? You feel what you feel and you follow the feeling. What is the psychoactive agent there? Attention. You normally, not you, a person, me, doesn't normally sense the subtlety of information that is in us all the time, all the time. When you do body scan techniques, it's just the icing on the cake or the tip of the iceberg or something. At the end
Hmm.
of one of these sessions, there is, I'll call it feeling, sensations, emotions, thoughts. I don't know what to call it, but there's a lot happening that is usually obscure. It's hard to connect with that. Maybe you do your breath meditation or mind, something. It's
Hmm.
there, like, sensation maximus is happening. If you are consciously aware, if you give your attention to what you're feeling, and you follow that feeling, it is potency of effect that is so much greater than the light and sound itself. I won't get into the technicality. You wanted science, but it's too much. This is a very predictable, well-known periodicity in neuroplastic neurology. It's neurostimulation, neuromodulation, neurorelaxation, neurodifferentiation. This is known. It's just a question of application that may not be so common or evident.
Or
So
understood as
like
well.
that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And there was, or it is recently, there's really interesting research recently out of MIT around
Yeah.
pulsating light
Hmm.
and its impact on clearing amyloid plaque,
Yeah.
which we understand the brain uses to protect itself, and which some people previously thought was the
Hmm.
cause of Alzheimer's, which we now know is not the case. But still, the fact of being able to clear out the amyloid plaque obviously allows for better brain function.
Yeah.
Can you talk about this and what your view is? What is happening that the
Okay.
pulsating light is able to do it?
I have a bone to chew on this. So,
Okay.
okay. Yes, it's true. It's not false.
Hmm.
However, the perspective is a dangerous one, in my limited, honest opinion. We are philosophically mechanistic, we are reductionists. And even how we've interpreted chemistry in terms of bonds and everything, and even the concept of the active ingredient. If you look at an herb, well, what's the active ingredient in here? Isolating, reducing, conceptualizing is our sense of reality. That's what we understand. Okay. That thing gave us the magic pill delusion, right? If there's this chemistry involved, there must be some kind of isolated, pure, like forget about all that stuff, all the chemical noise, like what's that? And I think right now we have, this is my opinion, everything what you said is good, true, and positive. However, the danger of falling away from the magic pill into the magic frequency is a danger.
Can
That's a
you
danger.
define what that means in
Yeah,
terms of the
40 hertz.
magic frequency? Yeah.
40 hertz is the magic frequency. 40 hertz does not exist in the brain. It's a mathematical lie of convenience. Brain waves don't express in whole integers. The most aggressive will use 2 decimal points, but it's the question of how do we deal with complexity? What's coming out of the top of the head electrically for EEGs is a volcano, an electrical volcano. And the algorithms will say, close enough, like 40. We do have 40 hertz, so it's probably 1 in a million. That we've got 40.732244, 38.76542, that there is
Constantly
this
fluctuating. Hmm.
fuzziness, this variability.
Hmm.
And I believe that our brain can understand 40 hertz, but, and I do this some other time. I hope I never did it with you. It is like I'm doing a Stephen Hawkins voice. It is like me talking to Claudia like this. She can understand everything
Monotone.
I'm saying
Hmm.
because I just said that a black dog came in my room. But there's something weird about that. It's not prosodic. It's not the way we converse. So
Hmm.
that's just symbolic. There are 2 kinds of signals fundamentally: symbolic signals and performative signals.
Hmm.
A symbolic signal is a signal that has a meaning, symbolic signal. The word dog, chien in French, right? Dog. It has a meaning. It's just a sound.
Yeah.
Performative, like to perform. Performative
Hmm.
signals don't have meanings. The signal is the meaning itself, like the color, the color that you're wearing, whatever the name of the color is, that purple,
Yeah, we couldn't figure
right?
that one out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, or cobalt blue, one of my favorite colors. When you see it, you have an experience. There's no associated meaning. So I think that our brain says, I get what you mean, but it's not really a natural signal yet. that I think we have to have, that's why I said about the danger of reductionism and mechanism. I want the pistons in my car to be very regular, not, but I don't want that in my heart. Heart rate variability, this microsecond adaptation of the autonomic nervous system. That's also in our brain, but
Mm.
hugely more complex. There are at least 10 different types of variability. So
Mhm.
my proposal is that, I mean, if I could run a study, I'd run it, or design it. I wouldn't run it, but that I would like to have a very fuzzy 40 hertzish signal
Range.
and
Yeah. Hmm.
compare it to that whole number integer of 40 perfect hertz, because it's an organism, it's biological, that so much of what the algorithm, because it's all the algorithm. The algorithm says yes and no at average. It takes a mean, it makes an average,
Hmm.
and that's what it tells you. But that's not it. When you park your car in the garage, as long as you don't hit the sides of the garage door, it's okay. But I bet it's not exactly at the same position
Spot
in
each
millimeters.
time. Yeah. Like they
So
say, there's no straight lines in nature, right? So.
yeah.
Mhm.
So that's my, I guess it's a perception caution that it is true, it does work, it does do that, but I suspect that it is a limited effect. And it may even, the danger of using exactly the same signal over and over is habituation.
Mhm.
That's that's the danger,
And
right?
then it
That
doesn't have the same impact on the brain
and then it
because the
goes,
brain is like, oh, I know it's coming. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
it worked, but why doesn't it work anymore? Well, you've
Hmm.
habituated it. There's no
Hmm.
novelty. There's no surprise. You know,
Yeah.
the guy that taught me the most about what is information, Gregory Bateson, a brilliant anthropologist, giant mind, now dead. And I struggled for a long time. What is information? Matter, energy, information. One, two, three. Two bumper stickers. Did the whole thing. I still use it. It's the core of my design process. He says information is news of change. Information is news of change. So no change, no news, no information. Same, same, same,
Interesting.
same, same. The
Hmm.
second one, which is an elaboration, brilliant. I worked with a bunch of Russians that really elaborated on this. We didn't get it in the West. Information is a difference that makes a difference. So not every change is significant. So yes, information is news of change, and information is a difference that makes a difference. And I think that when we hit these highly repetitive whole integer frequencies that are a very limited dialect as to how the brain signals within itself,
Hmm.
that we risk the danger of missing a broader opportunity plus inducing habituation. So
Hmm.
I just pulled up a paper. I saw the one you sent over, that for global gamma throughout the brain, if you want to induce a more globalized, I mean, there's never only
Hmm.
one frequency, but globalized in typical mature middle-aged adults, 36 to 38 hertz created better global gamma,
Hmm.
and for older persons, 32 to 34 hertz did. And in these kinds of studies, if you really want to get like specific, go to at least 2 decimal points. So
It's yeah, it's so
yeah,
specific and to the actual hertz frequency as well. Yeah,
it's
because I think that's the challenge of something that is so complex, as you said at the very
yeah,
beginning, to bring it down into a scientific method to be able to
yeah,
analyze it in a clinical setting, to have a clinical trial and research then off the back of it, and what are the outcomes, to
yeah,
better
yeah.
understand it. But what is coming out is obviously very promising.
Well, it's
What
super promising. Absolutely. I just wish we would be a little less mechanical and reductionistic. Don't make mathematical lies for convenience. Uh,
Mhm,
Organisms are 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 a lot dirtier and noisier and detailed than your new car.
mhm.
So that's what I would. That's why I say I have a bone to chew, or whatever I said. That
I understand. I understand. I want to touch on brain signal variability,
oh boy,
Garnet. So what is brain signal variability? Can you compare it with HR, like what HRV did for the heart? Is this what is going to be the
Yeah,
term for the brain?
yeah,
What is it? Why does it matter? Why is it interesting?
it's really interesting. It's really interesting because there's a lot
And
of what
why?
I just said that, okay, I mean, HRV, I think, is relatively well known. Heart rate variability. If a person has a heartbeat of 60, the conventional thought, well, because there's 60 seconds in a minute and it beats 60 beats per minute, it must be beating one per second. That's pretty easy. And if that's true, the person's probably about to have a heart attack. It, it may be true, but it's not a good thing. So
Yeah.
it turns out that between each beat, you know this, between each beat, there has to be some temporal difference. What that's reflecting, pardon me, what's that reflecting is autonomic nervous system, sympathetic, parasympathetic adaptation, but in microseconds. Like one whole second is way too long for what
Mhm.
needs to happen. You know, we're biased by the size of our body and how fast we can move. Is an elephant big? Yes. Is a mouse small? Yes. Compared to what? Size of my body. You know, is a cheetah fast? Yes. You know, is a snail slow? Yes. What? Compared to my body. So we're so human centric that we don't understand that there are different time periods. Like now in the Olympics and other sports, we see who wins and loses in a hundredth of a second.
Yeah, it's
You
wild.
can't
Yeah.
see that with your eyes. So heart rate
Mhm.
variability says, hey, guess what? That there should be a temporal difference between each heartbeat. And that's what you also want. Like when the doctor puts a stethoscope on your back, breathe in, breathe out. It's like, what the hell? What, you want to hear me breathe? What are they doing? Well, when you breathe in, your heart should speed up. When you breathe out, it should slow down. So they're checking at a very crude level your heart rate variability. Cool. Brain signal variability. I love very complicated. Oh my God. Yeah. Anyway, so it turns out that the brain also has a lot of this variability. Up until rather recently, 10 years for sure, 5 years almost, when the algorithms check what's happening in the brain, like amplitudes or frequencies or networks, the algorithms threw out all that stuff because it was just noisy, getting in the way of a signal. So by design, people make the algorithms that, AI didn't do it, at least not yet. People make the algorithms because there are certain that comes out of cybernetics and actually radio technology, where you don't want a lot of noise, you want purity. So the noise to signal ratio is a big
Mhm.
deal in communication theory. Well, guess what? We thought that was also true in the body. So that noisy stuff, throw that away. Oh my God, wait a minute. That's really important information. Oh, oh. So now we understand that in the brain, there is a lot of this fuzziness, this chatter, this noisy stuff. I say, you can't have fun if you're afraid to get dirty. You've got
Mhm.
to appreciate that. So
Mhm.
it's too dangerous to go too much further with. But the important thing is that, well, I don't know if it's the important thing. One of the important things is if we want to somehow, with technology, to communicate with the brain for brain change, we have to be careful that we don't make it too pure mathematically, because the brain will kind of understand, but it's weird. It's not really okay. The example, the early music synthesizers in the MIDI board, and way back was moved. Forget that. That like you have a keyboard, and oh, I want to play violin, and you choose violin and you play the keyboard, but it sounds like a violin. And now, of course, it's a huge, expanded, elegant platform and software. But what was weird about that is that it sounded something like a violin, but it didn't really sound like a violin.
Mhm.
Why? Because it was too pure. There is no violinist in the world that, one, they wouldn't attempt it. The other is it's impossible to not have these fractional distortions of that note. As a matter of fact, like blues guitar, you bend like that. So wait a minute. Now the sound music software has this process generally known as humanizing. So that when you do these things, except for auto tune, which is like in the head, but that the idea is in nature, mathematical purity is an abstraction that we put on it, that actually there's all sorts of, I say, like my brain, your brain, the human brain, well, maybe brains in general, that they shimmer. They shimmer like, starlight over water at the ocean. It's shimmering around snowfall. So
Hmm.
that shimmering aspect is brain signal variability, and that we need to work with this kind of sophisticated musical quality, like somebody on a conga conga, yeah, drum,
Congo, yeah.
bongo,
Hmm.
conga, different. um it's the drum machine sounds different because it's too perfect. It's like looking at somebody that's had plastic surgery where the face is now symmetrical. You look
Hmm.
at that face, you say, you're weird. What is it? Because there's
Doesn't look
no
good.
human face that is symmetrical. So this little bit of non-perfection is actually natural. It's adaptive. It's
Hmm.
meaningful in and of itself. You don't have to apply a meaning to it. So working with the brain, I think we've learned a lot from music, and now we have instrumentation. Like I say, maybe I said it to you, there was no saxophone music until the saxophone instrument. The musician may have had the feeling, but they couldn't express it with their flute or their trumpet or something. Then Adolphe Sax, 1754, I think, made this thing. So right now we're creating instrumentation for light, and we're expanding sound to be closer and closer to the brain's native language. And as we do that, I feel confident that enhancing neuroplastic change and other elements of cognition and information processing, it's going to get really good. It's going
Because it will understand
really
it a
good.
lot
Yeah.
better because it will be able to understand the noise.
Yeah.
Is that essentially? Yeah.
Well, it's like, the sitar. How many harmonics do you hear off of that? And even, this head bobbling thing, right? It's because if you bobble your head, it does the wah wah effect on sound. Wow, 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 wow. So, you know, I don't know. It's just it's like great stuff. It's so interesting.
And with the brain signal variability, excuse me, how much is it looking at the different brain waves, right? So alpha, beta, gamma, etc., theta,
Yeah.
versus actual the signals and the frequency going on. So what is happening exactly there with measuring?
Well, if I knew the how to answer it exactly, I'd be famous, but and I'm not. So right now there are 10 different types of brain signal variability that you can examine. You don't know how to measure until you know what you're trying to measure.
Yeah.
I can have a thermometer for heat, but it doesn't measure humidity. So, although there's a correlation, it's not the same. In brain signal variability, we're interested in things like, oh, from one frequency to another, how much change happens? Or how about amplitude? How high does it spike or not spike? Or like it gets too technical. But right now, unlike heart rate variability, where it is just a measure of time, all you're doing is you're measuring change in time. Is the time between one beat and another longer or shorter? That's all. So the dynamic is temporal. It's just time. Well, we can look at the brain variability in terms of time, but we can also look at it in terms of amplitude. We can look at it in terms of localization. So most of this is really new. It is for me, the holy grail of like, what are we actually trying to figure out here? Well, that stuff wasn't a bunch of noise. Guess what? That's where the information really is.
Hmm.
So the going back to Bateson, Information is news of change. Change, difference, variability, it's all the same thing. You know, the
Hmm.
delta from not delta brainwaves, but delta mathematical change.
Yeah.
I work with delta dynamics, delta deconstructions, because like the I Ching, different types of change. So brain signal variability, I believe, within a relatively short period of time, maybe like 5 years or something, is going to open up a ton of understandings and applications about how to interact with the brain, because the brain is not a piston driven engine like in my car. It's not mechanical.
There's more fluctuations around it. So,
Yeah.
by understanding the brain signal variability,
Hmm.
essentially,
Hmm.
you believe that off the back of that, there can be more customized, personalized brain training, brain neuroplasticity
Oh,
improvements. The
absolutely.
potential is. Mhm.
Absolutely. 6 months ago, MIT again released a study plotting brain signal variability on 6 executive functions. Okay, you know, the things we do to figure stuff out.
Mhm.
And they
Mhm.
plotted it from 0 to 90 years old against a broad population. So 6 different ones. And these 6 different lines just, you know, tightly clustered, starting at the 0, peaked, and then dropped like a perfect arc, like a nice Bayesian curve almost.
Mhm.
And the average is not common. The average adult brain, in terms of these executive functions, as measured with brain signal variability, peaked at around 45 to 46 years old,
Mhm.
and then was a frighteningly regular decline back down to 0 again, paralleling the mirror of the ascent from birth and the descent to a long laid death. So,
Mhm.
if we can find ways of exercising the brain's ability to change, that's my motto. Get the brain to, if the brain can change when change is required, that's a healthy brain. There's
Mhm.
no ideal state. Stop that thinking. There is no ideal frequency. Stop that thinking. That
Mhm.
there is a spectrum of dynamic change capacities. And being able to, like the most simple one, the most evident one is now I'm awake, now I'm asleep. Can your brain make that change? A
Mhm.
lot of people can't. And fortunately, the NeuroVIZR is quite successful in helping to regulate sleep. And I think it's because the circadian biology is so pleading for help that as soon as you loosen up the glue and as soon as you move things around, the circadian cycle says, hey, you know that sleep that I've been wanting? Give it to me. So
Mhm.
this issue is, I mean, going back to me sleeping on my right side and my left side, if I can't change when I need to change, I got a big problem. And that's true of the complexity of our brain, that our brain is highly adaptive. Yes, it seeks ordered patterns. However, it's encountering an environment that is always demanding changes. Hunger changes, temperature changes, pain changes, change. They say the only constant is change. I don't
Change.
know if
Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
true. So that's what I think. I think the variability thing is actually as much of a monster change to go from the adult brain sucks to the adult brain can change. Neuroplasticity. I think brain signal variability is, I don't know, make up a number, 10 times more important than neuroplasticity as a whole. Yeah.
Wow. Very exciting times ahead. As we finish up today, Garnet,
Uh huh.
can you help people to understand what are some specific use cases, or what would you recommend if someone would be interested in trying the NeuroVIZR, but
Sure.
wants to understand, how can I apply this in my day-to-day life? Like, what can it help me with? You
Okay.
mentioned sleep. What are
Yeah.
some other modalities that you recommend
Okay.
for
Well, I'll go back
using
to
NeuroVIZR?
something else that I said earlier because I think it's kind of fundamental. One is short term, the other is long term. That right now I'm sitting in this chair. I've been sitting a lot today. My low back's a little bit stiff. I can get up and stretch, and I have a bar hang from a little bit, and that gives me quick relief that is quite attractive. But it's not going to solve a long-term chronic low back pain if I have it.
Hmm.
So One is you can use the NeuroVIZR process for very quick, very satisfying state shifts, basically from discomfort to comfort, or to go from crazy to sane, or to go from I'm thinking to I'm meditating. It's this wow thing that happens quite regularly for most all users. It's one of the things I call it help right now. When you need something just right now, maybe it's not forever, that's not the point, but either this or I'm going to scream. I'd rather not scream. What can I have? So there's that. Then there's when you, well, okay, your brain is physical. We've already, I think we agree on that point. So if you want to help your body, your physical body, soma, head to toe, then some kind of structured, reasonably regular reinforcing, we'll call it exercise or just call it activity, is going to give you things that are really attractive, but they only really come with time. Basically, you're going to develop new habits. And there are people that use the NeuroVIZR to kind of rewire, you could say, it's a bit graphic, but to shape the trait. A state requires the stimulation to be present. A trait is something learned that you don't need the stimulation, maybe periodically as a reinforcement, but your body has kind of learned it. Like once, so the brain prime, brain time, you could think of it as here's the lesson and here's the learning.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's a tool, it's an instrument, it's a mind mirror. It's a lot of ways of characterizing it. It is the experience itself is oddly both foreign and familiar. It's something like, oh, wow, I've never seen that before, but somehow I recognize it. And I think it's because it's innate. It's an innate neurological state. And
It's coming from within, essentially, what you are seeing, right? So the visuals,
yeah,
etc.
your eyes are closed.
Mm-hmm.
Even though there's flashing or flickering light, everything you're seeing is internally generated, which is why we call it neuro reality instead of virtual reality, augmented reality. I playfully say neuro reality is when you turn virtual reality inside out. I don't know, just words, but
Yeah. But
it's
so
it's
for
really
things,
it's
use
good stuff.
cases like focus and calm for sleep,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
have one. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the pretty much the easy stuff. I would say, and I'll use the vernacular, the people that have a little bit of a, not a hard time, but they don't like yummy it right away, are control freaks.
Mm-hmm.
People, that just want to keep it together and, you know, that kind, and I'm speaking in a very common term, but you know what I mean, that letting
Yeah.
go or accepting it,
Surrender.
or,
Mm-hmm.
that the benefits are really quite evident and attractive, and it's like, oh, well, don't be afraid, it's not going to hurt you, it's just some flickering lights. But yeah, overtly, in a larger model, reinstituting normative sleep is probably the most common. And the other most common is, I just love this thing and I can't wait to do it because I get to have my me time. And I try to meditate like, and wow, this is great. So I'd say in a macro scale, recalibrating normative sleep in the circadian cycle, in the mini me world, it just feels great and it's a great relief and it doesn't hurt you. It's kind of nice.
It's good for the brain.
Good.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Garnet. So if listeners are interested in understanding more about
Mm.
brain signal variability, pulsating lights, what are some online resources or books even that you would recommend they start with?
Well, online stuff is tricky because there are a lot of things said. Of course, I have my own website, the company website, neurovizr.com, VIZR. Of course, I'd recommend that. Um, there are a lot of people doing really good things out there. Unfortunately, some of it is more on the scientific side, and you may not be so comfortable with the language. As far as neuroplasticity, the books by Norman Doidge, like Dodge with
Hmm.
an I, Norman Doidge, they're a little bit dated, but they're fantastic. He's a medical expert psychiatrist, and each chapter, I think one the most famous is like The Brain That Heals Itself, but Norman
Hmm. Hmm.
Doidge, and they're two popular books. Each chapter
Hmm.
is kind of like a mini short story, very readable, very inspiring, and authoritative. He
Hmm.
doesn't get into the the nitty gritty of EEG, this and that, but fantastic, fantastic stuff.
Wonderful. Where can people follow you and see what you're up to, Garnet? Any social
Well,
media links or
well,
website?
your podcast. Okay, they can follow
Yeah.
you because
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
following you.
Thank
Um,
you.
I do some other podcasts. As I mentioned, the neurovizor.com I write tons of papers and I talk a lot, as is evident. So, there's YouTube stuff and things around, older stuff that I'd say I'm embarrassed by. But, and if you have a NeuroVIZR, we have a new uh, community built on the Circle platform that we just started it like, I don't know, 10 days ago or something. So if you happen to have, you're a welcome participant. Um, I'm creating courses, basic concepts, and, videos and all of that.
Mhm. Amazing, Garnet.
Keep it
Thank you
simple.
for coming on for round two, Garnet, and taking the
Okay.
time to share your wisdom with us. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Garnet. I appreciate it.